College football stays addicted to quick portal fixes while Clemson doubles down on their culture. We'll talk about that and much more right here on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson graduate, and host and producer of Locked On Clemson. Also host and producer part-time over on 105.5 FM The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're new to the show, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And I'm going to do one even better for you. Don't do it until you know you like the video. So don't do it. Hear me out. Watch the video. See if you like it. Then do it. If you like it, like and subscribe. I know you're going to like it. Well, you know how we do it here on Locked On. Exclusive Clemson content Monday through Friday, every single week. And don't forget to follow me between episodes over on X at The Morgan T Show, where we can talk about all things Clemson, really whenever you want. And, you know, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So go check out FanDuel and FanDuel.com. You know, we love them over there. Today, we're going to talk about really the transfer portal and kind of what sets Clemson apart, because today is the opening of that second window of the transfer portal. I guess you could say the spring transfer portal, if you will. So today is a day where a lot of anxiety for a lot of fans out there about what is going to happen to their football program and what could happen to their roster and how this could impact positively or negatively in 2025 for the fall. But Clemson fans probably don't feel that way, honestly. And that's not common across a lot of college football teams out there. And we'll talk about kind of really this whole show will be about why, because, you know, with it being the start of the transfer portal window, I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of look at how Clemson is keeping themselves really separate, but, you know, I guess you could say keeping themselves Clemson. You know, the NCAA transfer portal window is going to be open now until Friday, April 25th. And some players have already announced their intentions. And Clemson has lost one in Tavoy Fagan and a cornerback prior to today. But you can't officially be in until today. So now that they are there, you're going to see thousands, I'm sure, hundreds at least, that are going to go into the transfer portal. And not a lot of players really move on to a better landing ground. As we've seen with college basketball, you know, there's these head scratchers like, why is this guy going to this team? He would be much better at our team. You know, he's going to get maybe not as much playing time, but this is a better program, you know, and then that kind of confuses me as well. But some of the most notable players that are out there, you've got Jonte Cook, wide receiver, Washington, Jaden Rashada, quarterback from Georgia, and the big one, I think, is Nico Iamaleava over at Tennessee. I think that one is the one that's probably caused the most controversy, caused the most discussion on the radio for sure, because of, you know, the whole situation with him basically making what we understand to be $4 million and then wanting more money and wanting like $80,000. I mean, the rumor out there, I believe, was $80,000 more. And Tennessee basically said, no, you're not going to shake us down. And it kind of is, this is going to continue to happen. Players are going to continue to bounce like this. And it's going to get to a point where you're going to need a collective bargaining agreement. You're going to need contracts, and it's going to be professional. I mean, eventually, fans are going to demand it eventually, because you're not going to want to sit around and spend money, donate money, give money in a revenue situations or scenario like ticket purchases or jersey sales or whatever it may be. You're not going to want to do that if these players are just up and leaving or shaking down your university that you believe in and you love. Now, there's a connection there that we have that the players don't have, you know, and a lot of these players don't have. Now, they used to have it. And I would say maybe a majority do have it, but there are still some that are like not attached to the university at all, like you and I are. I mean, a lot of you listening to this podcast are thinking, wow, I spent 4 of my best years there. For me, I spent 3 of my best years there as an MBA, and I've spent 38 years, I would say, give or take, because I was probably too young to know, but I spent most of my life at Little John Coliseum, at Death Valley and Memorial Stadium, walking around the campus, taking my children, my daughter there, and taking your children there for sure. You know how it is. Going there with your family. With my dad, I have a lot of really good experiences there, and now with my wife and my daughter, it's kind of part of me, right? I bleed orange, as you say, but in today's world of transfer portal and making money, and not having any kind of commitment at all, really. That's kind of where we're getting to, where there's no loyalty at all. And that does worry me, but Clemson really has kind of tried to separate themselves from all of the noise and the craziness and the chaos. And we're seeing that now as there's a lot of teams out there struggling to find out who their quarterback's going to be, who their star player is going to be, how many players are they going to lose. Clemson fans and the staff really don't seem to be reacting that way at all. College football is obsessed with what's the latest, what can you do for me now? Not what you did for me yesterday, but what can you do for me today and tomorrow? And if you're not going to get me what I want, I'm moving on. And Clemson refuses really to kind of play by those rules. Instead, they really focus on culture first. And I know a lot of teams out there are saying that they also have a culture first mentality, but to me, I don't see it as much. I do know that teams want to be a family. They, every team wants to kind of have camaraderie and work together and have a culture of teamwork and, sacrifice for each other. But Clemson really kind of does that and much more. And Jordan Sorrells spoke on it on the Two Right Turns podcast recently and said, about Clemson's strategy and how they prioritize long-term development of players over just portal patchwork of players. And unlike a lot of teams out there who just continue to rebuild annually and you don't even know who is out there on your team the next season, Clemson's system continues to remain focused on continuity for the majority of the roster. Now, fulfilling needs where you need that, I think that is great. And Clemson can't go the route that they did earlier, where it is exclusively high school player market. That's not going to be successful, I think, long term. You do have to supplement with the transfer portal player market because those guys are typically older. They've got more experience. They've got more time in the weight room and nutritional value from their university. So they're not true freshmen who are just out of high school who you don't know kind of what their regiment has been. But Jordan Sorrells kind of highlights, and he's been forced into this, or I guess kind of built himself into this general manager type role, orchestrating everything from, recruiting logistics to planning out the roster. Clemson believes in, focusing on what matters to them, having a consistent roster that you don't have to be stressed out about every single week or every single day in some cases, and focusing on the players who want to be there for the right reasons. And fans should really feel secure knowing that you've got a guy like Jordan Sorrells out there. To me, he's been around for a long time. He's an upstate guy. I know some of his family members, and they always have great things to say about him. And so he's a guy who is going to put the right things first and make sure that he is working with integrity and that the roster is built with integrity. And it kind of goes back to being selective in the portal. And maybe Clemson doesn't use the portal at all this time in this open window. And a lot of fans maybe say, well, I want this player, I want that player. And I understand that. And there's nothing wrong with kind of going out there and having a Christmas wish list. But when it comes to portal usage, they're definitely going to be selective, and they're going to focus on what their culture is, what the player is they're looking at, what the chemistry they may have with the team, and what they can bring to the team, and what their resume, and also their references show about them. Clemson dips into the portal definitely when they need it, but they've established a culture to where they're not going to just completely revamp the entire team based off of just the needs that they have on a roster. Now a lot of people argue that Clemson is probably too conservative, and even me, I've said it plenty of times that I think Clemson, should have gotten into this game a little bit earlier. But they really, in a lot of ways, you could argue, I could see where Dabo Swinney argued that the roster that he had, he felt confident in. And, as a coach, you're there, you're in practice day in and day out. And Dabo's been around a lot longer than I have in college football. He has been in there, and I'm just a talking head in this, but he understands what it takes to build a championship. He understands what type of players that are needed, what kind of type of leadership is needed. He knows that it's not built overnight. And that's what you're seeing in some of these teams. They may have one good year, but then 3 bad years, and then another good year, and then 3 bad years. I'd rather have long-term success that is more consistent over time. And it's only going to get worse, to be honest with you. These NIL deals are going to get higher. They're going to start adding in revenue sharing. You're going to have players making more money than they ever would in the NFL because they're just not that level. They're a great star player in college. How many players have we seen that? Star players in college that, really were nothing in the NFL. And that's going to happen. And you're going to have guys that are going to stick around and get the most money they can at the college level, for better or worse, While teams are chasing, trophies for the transfer portal, Clemson is focused on culture and chasing the right championships, which are the postseason, the college football championship, getting into the playoffs, getting into the ACC championship game. No panic here from Clemson fans, in my opinion. So why does it matter to you and me? Well, to me, I think this model is very sustainable. While it may have taken a while to get Dabo to where he's at now, it reassures me and the fans as well that Clemson doesn't react to trends and doesn't just do something because everybody else is doing it. They're setting their own standard. They know how to win, and Dabo is doing it the way that he can go to bed at night and be happy with the decisions that were made. And Jordan Sorrells leading that way as the general manager. So it's pretty awesome to see how Clemson is building this. All right, now coming up next, we're going to talk about Jordan Sorrells a little bit more and how he helps continue that consistency at Clemson. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get into the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you get $250 in bonus bets. Now, I love FanDuel because it's super easy. Now, I do literally everything from my phone. I don't try to be on the computer unless I'm doing this podcast. So I'm usually doing it from my phone. If I could figure out how to do this from my podcast or do this from my phone, I would. But FanDuel does everything super easy from your phone, right in your hand, whether it's picking your favorite team or getting into player props. And there's just so many things that you can get into instead of just a traditional way and the traditional fantasy. There are these prop bets that are out there that are just so much different than what everybody else is doing. And it really makes it exciting no matter what point of the game you get into or what matter, or no matter what part of the week you get into it. There's always something there new and exciting that you can check out. Plus, when the game tips off, you can combine live prop bets with same game parlays and really kind of like multiply your winnings so that you can really get a good payout there. And when you get a payout, it's near instant. You don't have to wait around for the money that you can get. You can go right back into having fun on the app as well. So don't miss out. Check out FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Behind Clemson's football machine is kind of, this guy that you can trust, this powerhouse, this quiet guy. You don't hear much of him unless you go to the Fort Hill recruiting wrap up. Jordan Sorrells is not always, thrust into the spotlight. And that's a good thing because he works in the background, getting his fingerprints really everywhere. And when you see success, with the transfer portal, with the roster management, with recruiting, a lot of it really is based on Jordan Sorrells and what he's done behind the scenes. He's entering in his 11th season here at Clemson, and he's become kind of I would say really the architect behind the scenes. He ensures that the roster is exactly the way Dabo wants it, kind of ensures that the vision is still in focus and that long-term stability is the number one priority, and that culture is the forefront of their success, and not just, doing what is popular right then and there. And again, I kind of went back to this at the first segment, but I was really one of those guys that was opposite of that. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I was a guy who was like, why isn't Clemson doing this? Everybody else is doing this. They need to get in right now. We have the money. We have the fan base. We have the desire to win. We have the coaches that want to win, but we're missing one or two players here. We need to get in this. And, whether or not the debate about Clemson being slow to it or not, I think is a good debate for sure. But I do think that Clemson has done the right things to get to where they're at now, making the right moves in the staff, making the right moves in the coaching staff and behind the scenes staff, and also making the right moves in the transfer portal and with their roster and recruiting as well. I like that Clemson is different. I like, especially when I follow recruiting and I see who Clemson has offered, I know that they are actually honest about who they're trying to go after. When you get an offer from Clemson, you know that it is real. It is not one of these, well, we're giving it to you, but we have 1,000 more, and so we may or may not honor it when it comes down to it. But Clemson doesn't do it that way. And Jordan Sorrells is really kind of the general manager behind it all. He manages the logistics. He manages like Clemson's future and the roster, and really could be one of the most underrated assets that Clemson has. The fact that he's been around for a decade means that he deeply understands exactly what Clemson is all about. Now, I believe he originally went to Furman, so, he's not a Clemson Tiger in that sense, but he understands football. He played there. He understands Clemson's culture because he's been around a while. He's been at Clemson longer than I was a student there. I mean, if you really think about it, not longer than I've been a fan, that's for sure. But fans should appreciate continuity like that. It's rare in college football, especially in the coaching staff, because what do you hear from the players and the players' families and the fans that are the fans of the transfer portal? Well, the staffs are doing it. The coaches are doing it. They're jumping at the next big paycheck. Not so much with Clemson. They really, solidify their staff and try to keep guys around for much longer than most. And I think that's a good thing in the long run. Sorrells knows exactly how to recruit. He knows how to build a roster, and you're seeing that. He's not just scheduling visits. He's looking at, where I'm looking at next year's roster. He's looking at 3-4 years down the road. He is very meticulous in his planning, ensuring exactly who can fit, who not only fits culturally, but athletically. And I want to say this, I'm going to be a lot about Clemson culture right now in this podcast, but I don't want to detract from the fact that they're getting elite talent. They're not just taking anybody. They're trying to get the best of the best at every single position and to reinforce themselves as an elite program in college football. You're not getting to the playoffs. You're not getting to your conference championship if you're not still finding the best of the best. While they're trying to fit them into the culture and make sure that they fit into the culture, they're still going after the best of the best. Navigating NIL is going to be difficult, and it's going to get worse. Really, we're seeing it now. We're seeing guys that are moving around. We heard hints of guys like Rashada who moved on from one team to another because of money, and we've seen things like, honestly, like DJU, where his dad was very involved in kind of the inner workings of what teams he was going to, and kind of like a LeVar Ball type situation. You're going to get more and more of that, or a baby Gronk, if you will. You're going to get more and more of dads out there pushing their player into the forefront of the media, whether they're good or not, honestly, and whether they're good fits or not. And Sorrells has to be able to adapt to that, and I trust him to be able to do that, balancing money and financial factors with what Clemson truly needs. I think fans can celebrate, kind of what we have here at a general manager. And, he is one of those guys that's easy to overlook unless you go to these extra events. He doesn't get out into the front, with the media much, but he's definitely a savvy guy who has making a big impact on Clemson, and an unsung hero, really, to be honest with you. And why it matters to us is because Clemson needs guys like this in the background, building more than just a guy for 1 year, And I know you're probably thinking as I'm saying this, I'm going to say it out loud. I'm going to go ahead and say it. But because, Monday's show was about Brad Brownell. But, as good as Brad Brownell, and we praise him in the transfer portal it is a little bit frustrating because you're only getting 1 year from these guys, and you don't know how much they're really committed to your program. You don't know how much they really care about your university. Now, thankfully, it seems like Brad Brownell has done a great job in getting guys that actually do love Clemson and are extremely committed to being a player and getting their senior jersey. Like Victor Locken is in tears as he's walking away, and Joe Girard is still talking about Clemson more than he talks about Syracuse. So there are a lot of guys out there that are one and done type guys that do still very much care, and finding those guys that are the right guys for your program is really, really important. And I think that's why you have guys like Jordan Sorrells behind the scenes, making sure that a program is built on leadership, built on their long-term vision, and built on continuity. All right, we're going to finish up talking about how Clemson is balancing this culture that we've been talking about with the money and the bag, and why it really matters, and how Clemson, that balance will make them and possibly be their biggest weapon of all. I think a lot of fans were really worried over time about how is Clemson going to survive in the NIL era. And I will say I was one of them, and I still kind of feel that way in a lot of senses because Clemson is a small market. They're not Atlanta, they're not Dallas, they're not Miami or, New York City even. They're not LA. And I felt like that with the NIL, with the larger fan bases like Ohio State, you're going to eventually get to a point where it's the haves and the have-nots. And I'm still worried about that in a lot of ways. But when we get into revenue sharing, that's going to help a lot if they can get rid of the the bonuses that are from private donations like boosters and 110 Society. I actually would like to get rid of those. And I think that a lot of the staff on Clemson has also mentioned that publicly as well, is that the hope that you would be to turn to contracts, to turn into collective bargaining agreements, and to turn into primarily revenue generating and revenue sharing with the players, because that's the fairest way of doing it. You're getting rewarded for the performance, and you're not just getting paid out of pockets of fans. And I don't really like that. I like fans to be able to buy a ticket. I like fans to be able to buy a jersey. I don't like fans just giving to a quote nonprofit, which we know is a complete lie, and just paying players straight up through that funnel. I don't like that at all. And I hope that goes away. And I think that with this, what's happening this summer, you're going to see the revenue sharing be in the forefront. And I think it's going to get better because it's going to help spread the money out across all kinds of programs that are going to be able to perform and be able to put the money into it. Clemson is going to be a small market, that's for sure. There's not a Lamborghini of Pickens, there's not a Ferrari of Oconee, and it's not happening. But Clemson is going to be able to survive because of what they've built and the culture they have, the brand they have, and the fan base that they have. Because in the middle of nowhere, there's an 81,000, 82,000, if you will, stadium that is out there that was built by the fans, to be honest with you, and they're not going to walk away from what they've built. And I think that's what's going to be the heartbeat of Clemson going forward, and surviving in the NIL era. Not just surviving though. Clemson needs to thrive as well. But thriving without compromise, and kind of what we've been talking about this whole podcast is about how Clemson is doing that. And Jordan Sorrells also mentioned about NIL, and we have to stop saying that Clemson doesn't use NIL. I know Clemson fans don't say that, but the national media still kind of gets away with that from time to time. Clemson uses the NIL, and they use it heavily, and they use it very heavily in their roster decisions, from player retention to new recruits. Money is definitely part of the equation. Clemson has found a way to adapt to paying players, but still trying to stay stay true to their roots. They're proving that culture can still matter and that money also can matter, but they don't have to be enemies of each other, and they can actually work together to be aligned from the top down. NIL, really, we know this, you know this. This is not a surprise. NIL is no longer optional. You have to pay players. And Clemson, I like the way Dabo has done it in the sense of focusing on retention first. People still say to me, well, Morgan, they don't pay players. That's not true. The truth is that the number one priority is that retention that we mentioned, getting those players in that have already put on the jersey, that have already given you blood, sweat, and tears, that have already been going to classes and been committed and care about your university, care about your staff, care about the process. Let's pay those guys. Right? You do still have to pay the new recruits. I know there's a lot of tampering out there. You can you can say what you're going to pay a player once they commit to you. Now, what I mean by that is, let's say there's an uncommitted player that's out there that you are entertaining. When you go through the recruiting pitch, you can mention, hey, this is what freshmen are making here at Clemson. This is what the value that you would bring to the table. This is what you would get as a freshman at Clemson. So these new guys that are coming in, they're not coming in blind. They know that it's part of the equation, but it's not number one. Clemson doesn't lead with the money. They may finish off with the money and show you what you can make and what your earning potential is, but they don't lead with that. It's not just about all the money. They lead with values. They lead with what matters to them. They lead with the development. That's how you attract elite players, but keep elite players. And really, that's what keeps Clemson apart, and why we're sitting here right now on the day of the spring transfer portal window, and we're not panicking. Because their culture, their values are first, and then money comes second, but not second in a negative way. It's just second in that this is not the main priority. Keep the main thing. The main thing is, as all the football coaches say. Clemson, they're not going to make splashy headlines with wild paydays like you're seeing with Tennessee now. Tennessee no longer has a quarterback because of the craziness that we've seen in college football. But they're keeping their players happy. They're keeping their players invested. And the ones that go in and develop and are loyal and are committed to growing year over year, those are the guys that are getting paid. And maybe they're not guys that you're buying jerseys from, but they are guys that are committed to the university, and they're still playing at an elite level. Clemson's not just giving handouts here, but they are doing the right thing as best they can. And that's why you don't see Clemson in crisis like a lot of other schools out there. Dabo Swinney's philosophy is still what keeps the program on the straight and narrow. And with people like Jordan Sorrells backing him up, been around forever, making sure that the recruiting staff is in sync, making sure that the players understand and the potential players understand what Clemson's all about. It's really a rare luxury that Clemson has in this chaotic time of college football. And it's a big reason why we can trust what Dabo Swinney has built. We can trust the program that Clemson is. And even though some fans may wonder, is Clemson doing enough? Maybe they should do more. To me, the retention is proof. They don't get a ton of transfer players out. And if they are transferring out, a lot of times it's because they're losing playing time, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel for getting more playing time. So they're still developing guys. They're still building up stars. They're paying stars that are out there. And, but they're not doing so at the sacrifice of a lot of the drama that's out there now. College football is definitely entering in an era of big change, and Clemson is not going to be immune to that. They have to be prepared. They have to be ready for this big change. Whenever there is a new law that comes in place, I know Graham Neff is ready. I know Jordan Sorrells is ready, and that will help Dabo Swinney and the rest of his staff be ready and help them focus on what is the priority for them, which is being the freaking coach, leading the team and not worrying so much about all this. And that's what I love about what Dabo Swinney has done the past couple of months, is getting these guys in place to where, especially on the coaching staff side of point, to where he can take a lot of the responsibility off of his shoulders and focus on being the best that he is, which is the head coach, right? Clemson's playing the money game, but in their own terms. And I believe that we're seeing that it's working and they're still winning. every Tiger fan should be extremely proud of what we're seeing so far from the Clemson staff. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On College NFL Draft with Damon Parson and Keith Sanchez. As your favorite collegiate players get ready for the next level, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, Tiger fans, hey, that's it for today's show. I hope you enjoy the discussion. Hopefully you're not panicking out there. You shouldn't be, because you know what Clemson's all about. But we'll continue to talk about all things Clemson athletics the rest of this week. I hope you continue to tune in and hope you have a great rest of your week. And I'll see you tomorrow. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.